Well, we're off and running on the Krueg Show on a Friday. Hope everybody's having a great day. Niners getting ready to board the bird this afternoon and go to Pittsburgh. Week 1 has arrived. The 49ers in Steeler country to take on the Steelers at the stadium formerly known as Heinz Field. And with us, the former Steeler, key part of the Pittsburgh Steeler broadcast crew on the Pittsburgh Steeler radio network. The great Max Starks, former offensive lineman for the Florida Gators and the Steelers, among other teams, joins us on the Krueg Show to help give us a preview. Good morning, Max. Thanks for the time.
No, my pleasure, Larry. Looking forward to it. And like you said, we're going to have a big matchup this weekend, and I think it'll end up being one of the better games come this Sunday.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. It should be absolutely outstanding. And, you know, the Steelers, what kind of summer has it been so far for the Steelers?
Well, I think it's been a really productive summer. You look at not only free agency and kind of those guys getting into what we like to call the Steelers way, but some key additions during training camp. And then, you know, a lot of success, I think, with growing as a team, because this team is very young on the offensive side of the ball and creating kind of the synergy that's necessary to get through a 17-game season. I have to always say that to remind myself that it's no longer a 16-game season, it's a 17-game season. But, you know, great chemistry. I think the offense is clicking really well. And defensively, I feel like we've added some quality depth.
Well, we should give you a proper introduction. 2-time Super Bowl champion, all SEC player back in the early 2000s with the Gators. You played for the Steelers, the Chargers, the Rams, and the Cardinals. And now you're working on the broadcast team for the Steelers. And you know, what would you say, Max, has been the Steelers are obviously, I mean, I'm 53. I grew up in the 70s as a huge Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris fan. It was the Niners were a really bad outfit in the 70s, and the Steelers and Cowboys kind of dominated the decade. But the Steelers have found a way to keep that tradition going through the years. They've added to it. They've got a great history. It's one of the most iconic franchises. Mike Tomlin, I know, gets a lot of credit for the success, but he's not doing it alone. I know Kevin Colbert, who I've known for years, is a phenomenal general manager. He's now moved on. Omar Khan has taken the reins there. I think the Steelers do as good a job personnel-wise as almost any team if you go over the last 30, 40 years or so. What do you think is the key to the greatness and the longevity of the Steelers dynasty?
Well, I think it starts at the top, right? It starts with your ownership. It starts with the founding family of the Steelers, and that's the Rooneys. One of the biggest things I learned when I first came to Pittsburgh and I first walked into the locker room is that this is a family business. And in order to know how to run said business, you've got to go through each level of the business. And that's one of the things is that, when you look at when Dan Rooney was in charge, Dan Rooney started as a ball boy, when his father first bought the team, Chief, right? And he worked his way up through personnel and went through the entire process before he became the president of the team. Art Rooney, who's our current team president, he did the same thing. He started out as a ball boy just like his dad did. And now we see Dan Rooney Jr., Art's son, now going up through the ranks. I remember before he went to Dartmouth to become a quarterback, he was our ball boy. And then now he's the VP of business development. And so you see those subtle steps. And then there's Rooneys at every level of this business. You look at our scouting department, there's a Rooney. You look at the business office, there's a Rooney. And so that's where I think it breathes, because they understand that you got to know everybody down to the janitor's name if you want to be successful in this. And that breeds into the personnel decisions and then the type of guys that they're looking for in the draft and in free agency, guys who identify as a Steeler, that blue collar mentality, and that you're not coming in with a big head or with an expectation or something that's demanded of you. You got to go out there and earn it. And I think that's what has lasted is that kind of mantra and that base ethos of the Rooneys. It permeates throughout the entire building from every facet of the Steelers organization.
Now, you played in this organization and you've played in others, so you'd be a great guy to have perspective on this. Why is it, or how is it, that Mike Tomlin gets his team to be on that razor's edge immediately in week 1? I mean, by contrast, the 49ers, who have had great success under Kyle Shanahan, are only 2-4 in week 1 under Shanahan, and yet year after year, the Steelers are a great bet in week one because they just come firing out of the preseason, and they seem like they're not just bringing energy, they're bringing energy and focus and attention to detail, and they're ready to go. What does Tomlin do all summer that maybe other teams ought to try to copy?
We hit. That's the first thing.
You think that's the key?
Yeah, we hit and starters hit. And I think that's where a lot of teams shy away from that, right? Teams are scared of injury. You see teams putting guys in bubble wrap. I mean, just take, for instance, the third preseason game we played against Atlanta. Atlanta rested all of their starters.
I know. I couldn't believe it.
Preseason game. I was like, what have y'all done to even denote that? I could see if you had a guy or two, but to rest your entire first team unit and literally send back. And Mike Tomlin made the comment afterwards, and it's aptly appropriate, is that if you want to box, you need to spar. You know, shadow boxing is only good so much, but you got to hit somebody, and you got to understand what that contact feels like so that you can callous yourself for the journey that's ahead. And I believe that's the way that Mike Tomlin's always been. From day one, when he came in, his first year when I was there, we hit the maximum allowable padded practice opportunities to a T. We were hitting his rookie year all the way up until like week 9 of the season. You know, when you start to back off and take away the padded practice, we were hitting all the way through week 9. And that's something that most teams, you'd be like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're actually having guys hit each other because that's what they do on Sundays? He's like, yeah. He's like, iron sharpens iron. That's where the standard is. The standard came for him. And that's the ethos he lives by, is you have to hit and play football to be able to go perform it on Sundays. And so that's the way he's always been. For all 17 years he's been here, it's been a consistent message of toughness, not only talking about it, but going out there and actually affecting it in practice and creating those simulated situations.
Is there any downside to it? I mean, you played for other teams. Did you feel fresher at the end of the year on any of these other teams because they didn't hit as much in July? Or is there otherwise it seems, because I mean, like guys like Sean McVay, for example, have kind of put in vogue this idea of what the Falcons demonstrated. And I watched the Steelers' entire preseason, and they ambushed everybody. I mean, it was they were totally dominant in that Falcons game. It was Steelers 1s against Falcons 2s and 3s, and it almost looked like a game. If it was a fight, it would have bbeen stopped.
Yeah, it was. But, you know, one of the things that my good friend Craig Wolfley, who's our analyst in the booth, you know, he said he said this. He said, listen, he's like, if you can't beat up on the stiffs when they're out there, then you are the stiff. So it's like hey, I can't affect who they're going to put out there, but if they roll somebody out there, I got to roll them up if that's my job. So ones have to look like ones regardless of who's out there. And it showed in that game, and then also in the Buffalo game in week 2 when it was starters on starters. Buffalo looked in complete disarray. So I think this Steelers squad has that confidence going into the season because they know that they've hit, they've practiced, they've gone in games, they've gone through all the pregame motions because, you know, the reason why the preseason is so important is it's not for the vets. It's for the young guys and the new guys to then assimilate to where the vets are. So the vets have to go out and lead, right? Well, always when you see a duck walking across the road, right, the little ducklings are right behind, you got to have the lead duck. You got to have the mama duck walk out there so that the little ducklings know what to do. So you go through those processes to make sure it's seared in their minds, making sure you have the right people on all your special teams, because as guys moves up and down, it can be a very crazy process, but you have to go through the protocols because you don't want to take anything for granted. I think that's where it comes down to. Don't take anything for granted and don't leave any stone unturned. And situations happen in a game versus practice where you can control those environments, and you have to be ready to step up into action at a moment's notice.
Let's get into some of the subplots. One of the juicy ones is Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson signed a 2-year deal with the Steelers in March, and he went on the All Things Covered podcast this week and said, you know what, there's some tell signs out there that tells us what plays we're going to get from those guys, meaning the 49ers in certain situations. He says, when I get my pick on Sunday, we'll talk about it. What do you think? I mean, and Brock Purdy was asked about it, and he basically took the high road. He said, Patrick Peterson's a great player. Grew up watching him and everything. I was from Arizona. He played for the Cardinals. It's the competitive nature of football, so we'll see. Do you believe that Patrick Peterson is right and there's a tell? And is there wisdom in revealing it before the game? What'd you think of that whole story?
Well, I mean, listen, Pat has never been one to shy away from a confrontation. I mean,
Sure.
I've known that since he's been at LSU, known Pat a long time. We were brief teammates in Arizona, and Pat has always been straight shooter. I mean, and he's always had supreme confidence. So, he didn't tell us what the tells were, which is always a good thing, right? But that's something that sometimes you put that cannon fodder out there. And you tell your buddies, hey, we got to back up my statement, guys. I went and sold these Wolf tickets. But I don't mind it because, I mean, I've seen that in other situations where guys are doing it. And I think it's a motivation to your team, right? This is a new look secondary for the Steelers. And Pat understands where he's at 13 years in as a veteran that has seen a lot of football, has gone against some of the greatest players, and he's picked them off. So if he says he has a tell, I hold him true to that. Now, the pick, we'll see if that happens. I would love for that to happen. But once again, it's something that gets it juices flowing. It gets us talking about it like we are right now on a Friday morning, anticipating this game on Sunday. And so it's going to be interesting, but I don't put much past him. He's done it at every place he's stopped, whether it's the Cardinals for a long time, whether it was for the Minnesota Vikings a year ago, because I remember that Buffalo game when he had a big pick in the game to change the course of that game. So he's done it. And so I have to say, until otherwise noted, you got to believe him in those situations because he is a phenomenal player.
Well, you're a perfect guy to talk to about this next topic, and that's Colton McKivitz is he's got 29 career snaps at right tackle, and he's getting TJ Watt. And I asked Colton about it this week, and he said, man, it's going to be fun. But I'll tell you, from watching the Steelers in the preseason and seeing all three of those games start to finish and then studying it on the All-22, the thing that jumped out is that the Steelers' edge pieces this year, and it's not just TJ Watt. I mean, TJ Watt's special. Alex Highsmith has gotten his game to another level. They have Marcus Golden, who's always been a nemesis for the 49ers going way back. And then this kid from Wisconsin, Nick Herbig, is looking very much like a young TJ Watt. Give me your perspective on these edge rushers as a former NFL tackle.
Well, the one thing I can say, Wisconsin does two things really well. They make great cheese, and they produce pass rushers and defensive players from the University of Wisconsin.
Right, TJ Watt, JJ.
Yeah, JJ, and then you think of Keanu Benton, another rookie that we have on the interior side. So we went to Wisconsin not once but twice to the well during the draft. And Nick Herbig is a kid that has studied TJ, has actually had a personal relationship with TJ over the last couple of years before even coming to the Steelers, where he picked his brain as former Badgers. Right, you're reaching into the NFL pipeline as a young guy trying to get some notes and get some studying tips. Then all of a sudden you get drafted to this team of a guy you've looked up to and you've studied his game, and now you get to study side by side with him. So Nick Herbig has a bright future. I mean, I'll just take an example to give you the type of kid he is. The first preseason game against Tampa Bay, he was not supposed to play snaps. He was only supposed to play special teams because he's like, this kid's going to be a backup. So he's going to take special teams reps only. He talks his way into the game through Terrell Austin. TA is focusing on the game like, hey, and he comes up. He's like, hey, coach, when's my turn? He's like, have you been in the game yet? He's like, no. All right, okay, we'll try and get you in next series. Not remembering at all what the script was as far as like, this kid's only supposed to play special teams. He was kind of banged up a little bit. Goes in 10 plays. He has 1.5 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and 2 tackles, in 10 plays. So you could see that type of just persistence that he has. And he's studying. You see a lot of similarities to what TJ does when he's out there. So he's a kid that's going to go through his growing pains, but the youthful exuberance and the tenacity that he possesses is something that's refreshing. So now you have 2 waves of outside linebackers that you can roll out there and feel comfortable with on game day, because pairing the young dog with the old dog, or the junkyard dog, as Marcus Golden's nickname is, presents an issue because they're all very different styles of players. Because whereas TJ is more like Nick Bosa, right? The 4-point stance, the low to the ground, shot out of cannon type of approach. You see Marcus Golden is stand up. He wants to be combative. He wants to be physical with you. And Alex Highsmith is just silky smooth with his moves. He's developed some nice pass rush combinations. And then Nick Herbig, he doesn't know what he doesn't know, right? You know what I'm saying? Young bull versus an old bull. I want to run down the hill versus, hey, let's walk and take our time. That's what you kind of get with those two sets of players. So I think it is something that we hadn't had, because a year ago when we lost TJ Watt, we had to revamp the defense essentially because we didn't have depth at outside backer. So you saw a shift to more of a 4-man line. But now we can stay in our base personnel and we can roll in 1 and 2 deep and actually feel good about the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, Herbig is special. He's going to be special. You can tell. I mean, his numbers in the preseason were just ridiculous. I'll tell you the other guy that I thought was very impressive in the preseason, I don't know how much he'll play, is this Mark Robinson, the 7th-round pick in 2022 out of Mississippi. This guy is a talent as well. He wears 93. I would imagine Shanahan's game plan is to try to isolate Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, maybe Keanu Neal, try to get these guys in coverage, isolated against an athlete in space. Have you seen Roberts or Holcomb tested in pass coverage at all in the preseason?
Yeah, I have. I've seen more so Holcomb than Roberts tested. And Cole Holcomb's a sideline-to-sideline type of guy. Like, he can run and he can keep up with most guys. Quan Alexander's another one that can keep in space. They have great closing speed, and Landon Roberts and Mark Robinson, those are your thumpers. Those are the guys who are going to meet you in the hole. They're going to say, hi, Kyle Juszczyk. Here's my name right here. Hopefully you see it a couple of times. Like, they're that type of physical, in-your-face type of linebackers. Then for Mark Robinson, I know he was the only guy held over from the previous year of the linebacking core. And this is only his 3rd year playing the linebacker position, because at Ole Miss, he was a running back his first 3 years. And then his last year, they moved him to linebacker. So last year was literally his 2nd year ever playing the position. So he's still learning. So there's still a lot of upside for Mark Robinson, but he also possesses those running back type of eyes. And that's one of the things that when you look at him, you say, okay, this kid's got something. It's because he can think like a running back. So when he's asked to shadow a running back, he knows what the guys are going to do because he was them. And he was a guy that had to find those holes. So he's looking at and strafing the defense, saying, okay, when this guy has the ball and this is happening, okay, this is where he wants to go. This is where his vision is. And that's what's kind of helped him edge the learning curve, is that instinctual tenacity and kind of nature that he has, that he can predict kind of what the running back's going to do when it comes to run situations. But still, growth in the coverage game has to come from him. So they've got to be on their P's and Q's. And you're right. When you're looking at, can we isolate a Keanu Neal? Can we isolate an Landon Roberts and get them in the position? That's what's going to be intriguing for Christian McCaffrey and company, is, those guys, and making sure you can evade them, because, like I said, they're very twitchy and very hair trigger.
Everybody knows Minkah Fitzpatrick's super special. He was awesome at Alabama. He wasn't quite the same player with Miami, but man, he has come full circle with the Steelers. What a phenomenal trade that was to bring him to Pittsburgh. He's one of the great players in the league back there. How's the rookie looking, Joey Porter Jr.? I mean, I loved him in college. How's he looking this summer?
Well, no, I think Joey's been doing a really good job. He's had great teachers. I mean, when you have Patrick Peterson, who's essentially a player coach with the knowledge that he possesses from his experience, that's helped him a lot, because that's the guy he's been behind and the guy he's been shadowing. But also, like you said, having a Minkah in the backfield, kind of that center fielder, right? Being able to see the whole field and tell you what you're doing. And he's going to cover up most of your boo-boos. But Joey Porter Jr., he missed the first game. And then, of course, has played the last 2 preseason games. He got some experience. And the good thing is that we have such different arrays of wide receivers that he's been matched up against most of those guys. So it's not just, oh my gosh, you got to go take the number 1 receiver. Go take the tall guy because you're tall, and just go against George Pickens all day. Like, you go against the technical route running of a Deontay Johnson. You go against the speed of Calvin Austin, and you get to see different body types. And Ike Taylor, who's one of our scouts and consultants with the Steelers, was at training camp the entire time. He was also in Joey Porter Jr.'s ear because he played with his dad. And we watched Joey grow up as a little kid in Pittsburgh, as a ball boy, coming to practices with us. So we all kind of take a little extra, effort when it comes to talking about Lil Peasy, and I know that's not a name he was, he's Joey Porter Jr., but he's Lil Peasy to us. Like we picked you up after Saturday practices to break down our huddles, so there's a certain affinity for him, and having those other legends come in and kind of pour knowledge into him has really helped him. And he's a guy that does not get down on himself, because at the DB position, you're going to have high risk, high reward. That's just going to happen. That's the nature of this position. You're going to have wins and you're going to have bad losses. But being able to recover from those and not let them bleed into the next play, I think has been one of the nice bright spots for Joey Porter Jr., because he's definitely been on the other side of some amazing catches by George Pickens in practice. And you have to recover from that and play the next play. And I think that's what that dogged determination has been really good to see.
Yeah, short-term memory on the corner for sure. Let's flip the card and talk about the offense real quick. I know there's been an emphasis on bigger chunk plays, getting, making some bigger pass plays and 25 plus yard plays. The offense, Pickett played 5 series in the preseason. I was telling my buddy who's like, hey, what do the Steelers look like on film? I go, well, I've seen them in 3 preseason games. Pickett's played 5 series. He's got 5 touchdowns. He looks really, really good, and their offense seems to be clicking. What has been the emphasis from Canada? What will we notice? Will Steeler fans notice a big difference from a year ago to this year?
Well, I think they will. They'll notice a drastic jump, right? I mean, one of the things we've seen as a trend in the NFL is the first year to second year of a quarterback in a system, you usually see a meteoric rise, right? I mean, we saw that with the Jalen Hurts. We've seen that with Joe Burrow. We've seen that even with the Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. Like, we've seen this where second-year quarterbacks, if they are the guy or the it guy, usually you take that jump from year 1 to year 2 as a starter. And for Kenny Pickett, I think one of the biggest things was he comes into camp not battling like he did a year ago, right? A year ago, he was a third-string quarterback coming into camp, rose to second-string quarterback by the time a year ago, the season started. Now he comes into the offseason and into preseason as the starter. There's a comfortability there. He's had those meetings with Matt Canada where it's, what does this offense look to you and what can we build on for you? They watched every single play, him and Matt Canada. They talked about things he didn't like, what he did like. And now this offense is starting to look like something that is a Kenny Pickett style offense under Matt Canada's watch. And we've seen the growth and the connection, because the biggest thing is chemistry, right? With your receivers. Like, you have to know what your receivers like, where they like the ball, and putting them in positions to be successful. Because one of the things we struggle with also with, what brings those plays and what you could attest to with Brock Purdy is catch and run, yards after the catch. And Deebo Samuel last year was the best in the NFL at yards after the catch. That's what you're trying to get to. How do you create yak opportunities for those receivers? And now he's learned how to put the ball in the right place. A year ago, he was just trying to get the ball to the guy. Like, I just need a completion. I don't care about yards after the catch. Maybe it'll be a little high and you get tackled on the way down, as long as we get the completion. Now you're seeing, okay, it's chess, not checkers. Let me put the guy in a position where maybe I throw him open, or maybe I do put a little bit more touch to get on his outside shoulder as opposed to leading him to the inside because there's a safety bearing down on him. Like, those are the things that are nice nuances. Then, of course, the upgrade to the offensive line. Isaac Seumalo was a big upgrade for the entire line, because where he plays at that left guard position, it controls a lot, especially if we get later in the season, away games. Having that guy that's knowledgeable, experienced, and also tough and physical, and comes from a pedigree of success in Philly, that permeates throughout the rest of the line, because this is still a younger or inexperienced line, and him coming in kind of solidifies those type of things, which gives the protection for Kenny Pickett to make those plays and also opens the holes for Najee Harris. So there were some quality additions added to help Kenny. Darnell Washington, a humongous target at tight end, and I'm surprised he made it all the way to the 3rd round. And then you also think about Jaylen Warren coming into his own as a 1-2 punch to Najee Harris. And, Calvin Austin, really, this is his rookie year. He was drafted a year ago, foot injury, the first padded day of practice, didn't see him for a year on ice. Now he gets to have his rookie season and his season debut, and he's going to be a kick returner as well as a slot receiver. So there's a lot of things offensively that have changed, and that comfortability, I think you'll see it on Sunday.
Yeah, Calvin Austin, another guy that really looked good in the preseason. To me, this is where the Niners and Steeler game is going to be won or lost is can the Steeler offensive line block, the 49er defensive line, and can the Niners put pressure on Pickett? Can they stop the run game? The Niners struggled to stop the run, Max, in the preseason. How does Canada split up the carries? I mean, Najee, we know Najee well because he went to school here. I've had him on the show many times. His agent's a good buddy of mine. He's a power back who runs upright and delivers a lot of punishment. Warren's more compact. I think McFarland kind of really shined in the preseason. He's explosive. I forgot how fast he was watching him at Maryland a few years ago. How does Canada divvy up the backs? Is there any rhyme or reason to how he utilizes these guys?
Well, I think RB1 is going to be Najee Harris. Like he's the bludgeoning tool, right? When you need a battering ram to break down a door, like that's where it's the cumulative effect of a game where Najee really shines. But I think you have to be smart and using situational football. I mean, once again, it's the first time we've had three backs that are really capable and could probably start in a lot of places. But Najee's your lead dog. And then from there, now it's how do we want to attack them? Do we want to press the edges? Well, that's where McFarland and Warren come in. Even though Warren likes to run between the tackles, he's like a pinball in there. He can still attack the edges like he did in Buffalo and break off a 62-yard run, and nobody can catch him. Same with McFarland. Tampa Bay game. Bounces it to the outside. Nobody can catch him. Pay dirt. So you have these different options, but I think it starts with Najee, and then as game flow dictates, now you start to work the other guys in. But Najee's going to get the lion's share of the carries.
One from the chat here, David says, what does Max think of Brock Purdy? Is he a real talent or a system player? Give us kind of the behind enemy lines impact, perspective on Purdy. He's obviously had a lot of success here in a short amount of time, but you've seen him and you've seen a lot of different quarterbacks in your career. What do you see with Purdy?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I see with Purdy, confidence. I mean, Brock Purdy is not a young quarterback. He wasn't a young quarterback coming into the NFL when he was drafted last year. Brock Purdy has played a lot of football at Iowa State and has been a guy who's seen a lot of success and thrown a lot of balls. So he brings that almost experience like Kenny Pickett, right? Guys who got the extra year, played the extra time, and they've developed and seasoned in college, whereas it's not a one and done flash in the pan like a Kyler Murray, right? 1 year starter, boom, to the NFL. You look at those, even Mitch Trubisky, right? Had one great year at Carolina, boom, number 2 pick overall. Trey Lance had a shortened season, went to the NFL. This something different about Brock Purdy and even Kenny Pickett. They're seasoned, they're more mature, and what you see is an execution and understanding of the offense. And I love what Brock did last year. I was rooting for him because I covered his games, when he was in college. I knew he was a talented young man, and people say, oh, well, he doesn't have the arm strength. But you don't need arm strength in this league, as was proven last year. Like, you need to be able to get the ball to the guys and throw them open and let them do what they do. That's why they get paid as well. That's why Deebo Samuel wanted all that extra money, because he does what he does. George Kittle commands a high price because of what he does. And so you want to make them shine. As a quarterback, your job is to be a manager, and I don't necessarily call it a system guy, but if you can run a system and you make the system yours, yes, you are a system guy because you've made that system your own. So it's not necessarily a negative, but I think, people kind of get tied into it because of Belichick Brady back in the day. And they want to say, oh, well, it was a system. And we've all seen Tom Brady proved it. It wasn't a system. It was the guy. And Tom Brady made the system work. And I think that's where Brock Purdy is a positive, because he makes the system work for him. What Kyle Shanahan puts out there, he goes out and executes it for him. And so I love Brock Purdy. I love his decision-making. I love his toughness. Obviously, the NFC Championship game tested the outer limits of that toughness, but he's a very good quarterback who I think the Niners made the right decision in starting him, because he brings that confidence. And you can see the guys around him want to fight for him. And that offensive line is willing to go to blows with anybody to protect him. So I think that's where I feel good about it. And he's going to be a challenge on Sunday because regardless of tells or no tells, he's still a very smart quarterback. And he's going to find the mismatch, and you have the pieces to make mismatches, and he's going to execute that. So it is going to be a tough challenge, and I do like Brock Purdy.
We're talking to Max Starks on the Krueg show this morning, 2 last ones, and then we'll get him out of here. Max, if Steeler fans, the hardcore Steeler fan, that's walking around, and all fans are, they're happy about their team, but they always have a concern. What's the Steeler fans' concern about their team coming into this year? I mean, I see a team that looked incredible in the preseason. I see a team that has a burgeoning, young, talented quarterback and an amazing defense and a fantastic organization. I see a lot more strengths than weaknesses with this team. But is there a weakness? Is there a concern coming into the year that Steeler fans are voicing?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is when is the floor going to drop out, right? You're always like, okay, preseason's preseason, and we feel good about it, and then things go awry. So I think it's always that holding your breath for the first 4 weeks of the season to see how it turns out. Because a year ago, we looked phenomenally defensively against the Cincinnati Bengals, who had just come off of a Super Bowl bid and lost to the Rams, and you looked amazing, but the offense couldn't move the ball. And so you're like, oh, so this is the issue this year. So it's always, when's the other shoe going to drop? When's the floor going to fall out? And then also, they were worried last year. TJ Watt was out, and TJ Watt missed a significant amount of time, and that defense suffered because of it. So is TJ Watt going to stay healthy, right? Or is there an injury that's going to happen that's going to derail us? That one injury that's going to just send us over the edge. And those are the kind of the general sentiments of it. But they love everything that we have. And I think for the first time in the 3 years that I've now been here, it's my 3rd year broadcasting and covering the Steelers, we have depth. So the concerns should be lighter, but Steeler fans are Steeler fans, right? They're Yinzers. It's always guilty until proven innocent in their mind. And so it's always that worry about that one injury, or that one side of the ball is not going to show up in the game, and that's not going to be a complete team effort. So those are really the 2 biggest concerns is, oh my gosh, we lost so many pieces in the offseason from a year ago in the secondary, a new look linebacking core. All of these things are concerns for them, and they always think that the worst is going to happen and the other shoe is going to drop.
One last one, non-Steelers, Niners related. I just thought it was so bizarre watching last night's Lions-Chiefs game in that, one, it was bizarre to see the Chiefs lose at home ever, and then to lose to the Lions are real and they're coming. There's no question about that. But the weird thing for me, and I don't know if it was weird for you, to see Chris Jones, who's in a holdout situation, sitting in the stands in the stadium. I've never seen that before. I know they were honoring the Super Bowl champions and he wanted to be there. But I mean, if you really want to be there, wouldn't you be there, on the sideline? I know it's a contract situation. I never begrudge players for getting their money, Max, because it's hard to get paid in the NFL and you have a limited window, and I'm all about the players getting every penny and doing really basically whatever you got to do to get it done. But wasn't that a weird scene, seeing him sitting there in the stadium around all these fans and knowing what he means to that team? It was weird. I thought that was very bizarre.
It was, and I can imagine the side eye that was given to Chris Jones as the last 5 minutes of that game, and Detroit was running the football down their throat to finish that game out and not give Pat Mahomes an opportunity to get back on the field to perform some Mahomes magic. It had to feel awkward. It's that awkward moment where you're sitting there and you're like, man, this is a good game, isn't it? This is really exciting, and they're like, it wouldn't be as exciting on this night if you were down there 95.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, and you're right. I think players should get their money. You have a limited window to get your money, but you also still have a current contract, and you're losing by you sitting there. You're losing millions of dollars as we speak. Like every snap that goes by, you have to think, cha-ching, cha-ching is coming out of my pocket, cha-ching, as you get there. But I think it also went to show, I think it also weirdly gave Chris Jones leverage because
Sure.
you're like, man, this defense, we thought we were really good. Oh, we could go without Chris Jones. Yeah, he can sit out however long he wants. It now is like, okay, light the fire under the GM. Let's go and get this done. Okay, Clark's looking at him like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Because we just saw what he means to this team, and the fact that I don't think Detroit has as much success, even with as good as that Detroit Lions offensive line is. I don't know if they have as much success late in the game if Chris Jones is in there affecting the middle and pressuring the guard in the center by splitting gaps and being in the backfield. So I expect something to get done, because they see that when you don't have Travis Kelce and you don't have Chris Jones, this is a completely different looking team. And man, what about Kadarius Toney?
How do you seriously catch the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those Key and Peele memes, you know, with the dude sitting there and the sweat's just coming down his face. He's sweating. I'm like, man, I would have been like, listen, you know what, Coach? I'm sick. I can't come to watch this show, because he single-handedly cost them some huge moments that could have turned the tide in that game.
Oh, and Sky Moore. I mean, Mahomes is looking around going, where's my receivers? What happened?
Have anybody with hands? I need a guy with 2 hands. Can we find one?
It's amazing when you take away Kelce, what it looks like. By the way, you are proof, Max. When I walk into the locker room, and it doesn't matter what year or what team I'm covering, I always want to go talk to the offensive line. Why is it that the offensive linemen always are the best talkers on the team? They're the most cerebral. They're the most introspective. It's like, doesn't matter what team, what year we're talking about. It seems like the O-line are always the great guys to go to if you want to get some perspective on the team and what we just watched. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because, not a lot of people come and talk to us, so we're happy to talk, first and foremost. But I think secondly, when you look at an offensive line, like the responsibility, it's a very different dynamic than any other position group on the field, because all 5 guys have to be synced as one, right? It's like the Temptations, right? 5 Temptations, 1 mic, right? We all have to be in lockstep with each other in the choreography and the application of the game. But also, we have to study a little bit more than most people, because we have to know what can and can't happen given on every single defensive front. So we study entire defenses. I mean, the first thing I learned when I got to the league was safety rotations and safety flow, and counting how you know what the defensive structure is based off of your DBs, not the down lineman. I know I have a responsibility to block that guy on the edge, but I need a whole concept to understand what's happening. And I think we take pride in the knowledge that we acquire during our career, whereas a lot of positions, like you said, you can fake it till you make it. You know, if you bust running through the hole on 22 double and you bounce to the outside for 15 yards, no harm, no foul. That guy's making plays. But let me try and freestyle and come in on an A-gap blitz, and I turn the defensive end free, and that guy backs out at the last second, because that's a tendency he's shown. Guess who's getting roasted? So it's one of those things that you have to be a little more interesting, and we have to have short-term memory loss, right? Because unlike outside of the quarterback, offensive linemen stay in the entire game. Pass rushers go out, linebackers go out, DBs go out, receivers go out, tight ends go out, running backs go out. Offensive line has to stay there. So we're also in the game the entire time. And so that breeds perspective with that experience. And you're able to, and you start to learn how to predict things and how to be more future sight, as I like to call it, as far as what's going to happen. Situational football. We got to know all the third down possibilities, just like the quarterback does. We need to also know where we're at in the game with clock management. You know, how does that happen? The 2-minute drill. We got to be set and ready to go. Because I mean, more often than not, when there is a penalty in a 2-minute drill based off of formation, it's never the offensive line. You know, rarely you have a guy line up a little bit too deep, right? You know, because he's getting roasted by the defensive end. But for the most part, it's not one of those things where we jump off sides in those situations for those type of reasons. It's usually your exterior players. So that's where you have a lot more knowledge to give. And we're also, let's face it, we're lovable fat guys. You know, who doesn't love it? You're
relatable. You guys are relatable.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we're the guys that we don't look like the rest of the team. We don't have abs. When we get a six-pack, it's usually you're reaching for it out of a fridge, right?
Right. You got to shake off the ice.
Yeah.
Max, hey, congratulations, man. 2-time Super Bowl champion. You carved out an incredible decade in the NFL as a player. Now you got a burgeoning second career as a broadcaster. Keep it rolling, man. Enjoy your call on Sunday. Thanks for jumping in on the Krueg Show. Awesome analysis. Really appreciate you, brother. And have a great week one. I can't wait to see this one because, I mean, the Steelers are hard hitting. The Niners last year, the stat that stood out, every team that played them lost the next week. That's how physical they are. This, Ray McLeod, who's a former Steeler, who's really fired up to be coming back to town. He's like, Krug, this is an ice bag game. And I said to Cleveland Farrell, I said, Cleveland, man, that the terrible towels are going to be out, and the atmosphere is going to be something. There's a lot of young guys in this defense. What are you going to tell them? And he said to me, he goes, Krug, I said, if you're afraid, go get a dog.
Yeah. Hey,
so
true statement. I mean, but it's old school football when it comes to the physicality of it. It reminds me of our Ravens rivalry, right? The AFC North is one I could say is officially back and is a very physical division of football. And the Niners, of course, get the draw of the AFC North this year, but I think they're up to the task. It's going to be a really good matchup and a really physical game. I can't wait for it to unfold.
Thanks again, Max, for joining us. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right. Thanks, bud. Take care.
There you go. The great Max Starks. He was fantastic. Offensive lineman, guys, if you're ever sitting there going, hey, who do we talk to? Who should I talk to? Who's got real perspective? Who can actually, verbalize exactly? It's the O-line. It's the O-line. It's always the O-line. And Max Starks, phenomenal. And he does the sidelines for the Pittsburgh Steelers radio network. All right. That was fun, man. That was fun. And we're not done previewing Niners Steelers. Later this morning, Bill Hillgrove, who, I interviewed Jack Buck. Jack Buck and Bill Hillgrove, I believe, are the only two guys, if you go back as far as the only guys that have done three major sports in one city, Jack Buck, the late Jack Buck, and Bill Hillgrove. Bill Hillgrove has been doing Steeler football for a long, long time. He's going to join us at around 11 o'clock this morning. So about an hour and 10 minutes from now on the Krueg Show, the great Bill Hillgrove will be in the house. Bill's been doing this. I mean, the guy's amazing. Handpicked by Dan Rooney to succeed their play-by-play man, Jack Fleming, back in the day. And this guy's worked alongside Myron Cope, Merrill Hodge, now Craig Wolfley, and Max Starks does the sidelines. And I'm just really, really thrilled. Personal broadcast thrill for me to talk to an iconic member of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh sports scene, Bill Hillgrove, the longtime voice of the Steelers and the Pitt Panthers, both on the football side and the basketball side. The great Bill Hillgrove joins us at 11 a.m. as we continue to count it down to week one, Niners, Steelers, and it is going to be phenomenal. I cannot wait for week one. And make sure you catch us as soon as the game is over. My son Kevin will join in. Baller will be in the house. We'll go week one review and post-game show as soon as the final buzzer hits on Sunday, right around 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. We'll go live with the Krueg Show and take your video calls and talk all about week one. Hopefully we'll be talking about a Niner win. But I'll tell you the one thing that's really interesting about this matchup, Colton McKivitz, 29 career snaps at right tackle. 29 career snaps going up against T.J. Watt. And T.J. Watt is as good as it gets. So that is going to be a fantastic matchup. It's going to be a pivotal part of it. The Steelers have incredible outside pass rush. I think the Niners maybe have a real advantage as far as Debo, Ayuk, and their receivers against the Steeler DBs, but the Niner offensive line is going to have to block that Steeler front. And we didn't even mention Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward had 10.5 sacks. I mean, as an interior player, he's really, really good. So Highsmith, Watt, Herbig, Golden, Cam Hayward, they come after you, and that Niner offensive line is going to be tested, and you can just bank on that for sure. Going to be tested for sure. All right. Let's thank our sponsors. We're brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. If you're driving down the street and you get a pebble that hits your windshield, now you get a crack, and then it gets bigger, 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 bigger. Or maybe you got a shattered windshield. Maybe you're like me and you had your windshield shot out in downtown San Francisco with bullets in your front seat. And you need your windshield replaced. Call Marin Auto Glass. They'll come where you're at, come wherever you're at. Pop out the old windshield, glaze in a new one, sweep away the glass. It's a one-stop shop. You cannot beat it. When you're in this situation and you need a new windshield, man, you don't know who to call. marinautoglass.com. They don't just do Marin. They do all throughout the Bay Area. 415-883-3030. My man Saeed owns Marin Auto Glass. He does a phenomenal job. We're also brought to you by New York Style Sausage Company, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue you're going to find in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. Get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon. Go say hi to Mary. Tell them that Krueg sent you. And also, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Type in the code Krueg and they'll match you up to $100 on your first foray into playing fantasy games at Underdog Fantasy. They're our brand new sponsor as well. All right, we'll hit the chat in just a moment, but let's have another word from our sponsors. We'll be back in 60 seconds, and we'll hit the chat with a couple final thoughts before we bolt for the door on the Krueg Show.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York Style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York Style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, sorry to interrupt your video, but I want to let you guys know that we've partnered with Underdog Fantasy this football season. Underdog Fantasy gives fans a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. You can check out their weekly Pick'em players, where you pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on their game stats. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, but you can win real money. This week, I'm going with Nico Collins, higher than 3 receptions, and Brandon Ayuk, higher than 3.5 receptions. You can enter the same as me, or of course, you can make your own picks. Sign up using the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they'll match you up to $100. All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. All right, thanks to Max Starks, really good guy. Enjoyed that conversation immensely. Hope you guys got a lot out of that. We got one super chat we want to throw in here as well from Daza 0187. He says McKivitz also has to deal with Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett this year, not getting any easier. Yeah, there's no question. Colton's he's in the best shape of his career. He's ready to roll. Talk to him this week. The one thing I love about McKivitz is he doesn't get too up. He doesn't get too down. He doesn't worry. He's not fretting. I asked him about TJ Watt. He's like, yeah, man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. That's like, I love that because that's the kind of mentality you got to have. You got to have that mentality of, you know what? No mountain's too big. No hurdle's too great. Bring it on. Let's compete. Let's have fun. You don't work football. You play football. So it's a game, and you got to have fun, and you got to keep it fun. And if it weighs too heavily on your mind because of any one particular reason, you're not going to play your game. So I like that. Sports fan says, I saw that interview. McKivitz has got a good temperament. Yeah, he really does. He, and Trent Williams said it. He's like, man, the one thing I admire about Colton is he doesn't worry. He doesn't worry. He's the moment is not going to be too big. He's not going to sit there and have 9 false starts and come up out of his stance and lose his mind. He's going to keep his wits about him. If he loses a play, he's going to forget about it and get on to the next one. So, but I will say this, and I wasn't even joking. I think the Steelers have the best edge rusher group in the game right now. Alex Highsmith is really underrated. 3rd-round pick in 2020. TJ Watt, 1st-round pick in 2017. He was the Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. And then Marcus Golden has haunted the Niners everywhere he's been. He's great in Arizona. He's great with the Giants. He's like one of these guys that he's good against everybody else, but he's great against the Niners. And then Nick Herbig was like you would have thought you were watching TJ Watt throughout the preseason. I'm not even joking. This guy's 240 pounds, but he's strong as heck. He's quick as anybody you're going to see off the edge. He's about 245. He was their 4th-round pick this year out of Wisconsin. So the interesting thing is they made, the 1st-round pick for the Steelers was Broderick Jones. I don't think he's going to play. The rookie tackle who's got a ton of talent, huge. I mean, he's, in a lot of ways, Broderick Jones is the prototype. 6'5", 311 pounds. Out of Georgia, great athlete. This guy's absolutely got the perfect build for an offensive lineman. He's literally the physical prototype. But they're going with Dan Moore, the veteran. The 4th-round pick in 2021 is going to start at tackle. Who, I know Dan Moore well because I'm an A&M fan. He played at A&M. He's a good player, really solid in his own right. 6'5", about 315 pounds. Eventually, Broderick Jones is going to be that guy. So they're kind of slow playing Broderick Jones. They're kind of slow playing Darnell Washington. You guys remember Darnell Washington's one-hand grab in Indy at the combine where he just plucked it out of the air with one hand on like an out pattern? I mean, it was like, what? Look at that. That was crazy. And Darnell Washington's the prototype. 6'7", 265 pounds. But they're slow playing him. I mean, it's Freiermuth is their number 1 tight end, and maybe you'll see the 2 tight end set. But on defense, watch for Herbig, watch for Joey Porter, watch for Keanu Benton. Those 3 rookies are all making an impact, and we'll see. Does Brock Purdy have a tell? And is Patrick Peterson going to pick one off? Or is Patrick playing mind games with Purdy and there is no tell? Purdy laughed it off, but, we'll see come Sunday. There's no way around it. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. All right, that is going to do it for us. Check us out at 11 a.m. The great Bill Hillgrove will be in the house later this afternoon. Jack Hammer and I will hammer out a segment and talk a little Niner football. We got a lot more coming. And then, of course, Saturday morning, the coach will be in the house. Sunday, we've got game day, and Kevin Baller will join me in the postgame after Niner football, maybe even JD as well. He's got boots on the ground for 95.7 in Pittsburgh, so maybe we can get a little JD action on the back end of the post game as well. Maybe even Damon Bruce. And then Monday morning, Damon and I do our first edition of our Monday morning day after show that we're still trying to come up with a name for, but really looking forward to that. Should be a big hitter Monday morning, bright and early, I think right around 8:15. We're getting that thing fired up on Monday morning. All right, for Max Starks, Larry Krueger, hope you enjoyed the Krueg Show. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to